People said that Jalen Hurts couldn't get it done. He couldn't operate from the pocket. He's not the quarterback of the future. I think he proved all those jigaboos wrong.
The extra yards, the tough yards, the finish on the play. Right there, you got three. You talked about this is the best tackling team. They don't.
It was almost like you were nervous, like it was a game. This giant, this figure, I mean, this guy, it was just like such a cool moment, special.
Have you ever noticed a commentator being discriminatory or using racial biases towards a player? If not, you just have in three different ways. The language of sports isn't just background noise. It actively shapes how audiences perceive players. When commentators repeatedly frame Black athletes as raw talent, it implies their success requires less preparation, less study, and less strategy. I spoke with former CBN News anchor Sean Brown, and he discussed biases in commentary.
Still happens. I think it's rare now. We're getting to a place where it's known, and so people are more aware because people have been very, very vocal about it. Athletes are very vocal. Coaches have been vocal about what's happening, and so I think there's a bigger awareness about it. But we're not there yet. It still exists. It still happens. I think we need to continue to be more vocal about what's happening so that announcers and reporters can be more educated about, hey, when you use certain terminology, this is the effect that's happening. When you communicate a certain way, this is what's happening. You're creating a narrative that's not there. And what you say matters. People are listening, and then they formulate opinions based on what you're communicating. And so your words have power, so you need to take care about what you say and how you communicate.
These narratives influence how players are viewed during drafts, recruitment, award voting, and even post-career opportunities. I had the opportunity to speak with current NFL player Shaun Wade about how racial biases played a role within his collegiate and professional career.
They'll twist your words around when you say things. It's different because you got sports commentators that played in the NFL, then you got sports commentators that haven't played no sports their whole life, and just no sports. So it's a different outlook for different people. I know I was reading what you sent me about the black quarterback compared to the white quarterback, and sometimes they do portray most black quarterbacks to be athletes, and I want to say thugs, but people that are high energy and they just don't. It's portrayed us to be athletes, and that's all, and not a throwing quarterback. So I definitely understand that too.
I mean, have you ever noticed how two athletes can make the same exact play, but hear two different commentaries? That's not an accident. Words shape the way people see athletes, and sometimes those words are hidden biases. Sports should celebrate talent, but too often, commentary reveals stereotypes instead of skill. I spoke with sports sociologist Dr. Letitia Brown about how racial biases plays a role within sociology.
Race we recognize as a social construction, and race really isn't the problem. The problem is racism. Racism is what drives these biases in the first place, and especially anti-blackness, because sports were created as this domain where men were supposed to perform masculinity. And early sports in the US context were for white men. And then, the integration of sports shifted the conversation. Like Dr. Ben Carrington, the author of Race, Sports, and Politics, who's also a sociologist, talks about Jack Johnson in 1908 and how his victory over the white Canadian Tommy Burns shifted and created this notion of the Black athlete as hypermasculine, hypersexual, violent.
The game might be fair on the field, but the commentary often isn't. It's time we confront racial biases in sports broadcasting. What is someone going to do about this? What is someone going to hold someone accountable about these things? Is it fair?
So when we think about racial bias in sports, we look at it through the lens of history and the social cultural world and how anti-Blackness especially shows up in the remarks that people make. And even though our society is not just black and white, like we definitely know it's not, a lot of the issues that exist in sports are often coded as black versus white. And it's just like, it's interesting to me, the same characteristics that people love about black athletes, like being strong and fast on the court, are the same things that get us killed by police. Like George Floyd was an athlete in his youth. And it's just like you loved him being big and strong when he was playing sports, but just walking down the street, he's a threat.
I had the opportunity to speak with Marcus Berry, a former director of recruiting at Temple University.
Yeah, like you said, it's not as bad as it used to be. But now there's always this preconceived notion that when you have a black player and a white player, especially at some of the positions like in football, like at quarterback, things like that, it's automatically assumed that the white player is smarter than the black player. Automatically assumed. The black player is he gets it because he's more athletic. He's not, but it's like they always assume, or not always, but in a lot of situations, it's assumed that the white player is smarter. And I haven't seen that a lot, but it used to be that used to happen a lot. Now it's kind of getting better. And it's so crazy at the start of this year, I think this is the first time it's ever happened. Of the 32 NFL teams, 16 of the 13, half of the NFL were the starting quarterbacks were black. Yeah. Now, when I was coming up, that never was, you never thought that would ever happen. So we've come a long way because of that. But then like I said, it's just certain biases. Like you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson. Everybody assumes he's just what he is because he's a great runner and things like that. Well, I went to a Ravens practice and watched him throw the ball around and watched him, make some throws and things like that. Not only was he cerebral and really smart in what he did, he actually is a really good passer. And it just, so right, like, man, he has this reputation just because he's an athletic black quarterback that he's not a great passer and he's not a good processor. But what I observe with my own eyes in person is that he is a really good passer and a very good processor. So those are just some biases that you see in the media that are not as bad as it used to be, but it's still there.
And that's why I made my project, to point out how something as simple as language can reinforce something as big as racial inequality. Because sports are supposed to be the greater equalizer, but sometimes the bias isn't on the field. It's behind the microphone.